Where does yoga come from? The Vedic context. So we've spoken about the four aims of life that are part of the Indian tradition. And we've also spoken about the four stages of life. Another idea which is very, I would say, key or intrinsic to the Indic view is the idea of what is known in Sanskrit as rina. Now, rana, so the tongue it's the cerebral sound, rana. Rana gets translated as sometimes as debt. But perhaps the English connotations of debt or obligation, duty, it's hard to render exactly what rina connotes, but the idea of rina is that when you are born, you have debt. Because your birth, you did not engineer it consciously. It's a gift. This life has been given to us, and so we have debt to our parents and our ancestors. And we have debt to the gods or the forces of nature that allowed also this life to become and this life to go on. There's also the idea that we have debt to the teachers. We've inherited so much from those who have developed so much knowledge of human culture over the millennia. So there's the idea that in life we have to honor our debts. We have to honor our obligations. We have to reciprocate. So, for example, how does one honor one's debt to one's ancestors and one's parents? Traditionally, it's said in the Indian system, by giving them, we honor our debt to our parents by giving them grandchildren, by continuing the line, and by being a better parent to our children than they were to us. So there's always this idea of the evolution of society. How do we honor the teachers? By using what they taught us respectfully, in the spirit that it was intended, and if we become teachers, to transmit and share that knowledge even more skillfully than our teachers are able to transmit it and share it with us. So again, this idea of the evolution, that's how we repay the debt. We pay it forward even better than it was given to us, is the idea. And then how do we repay the debt to God or nature? The idea is by walking gracefully upon the earth and leaving the ecos better than how we found it, leaving society and the underlying ecological structure in better shape than how we found it. And they say in the it's in the Mahabharata, one of the great epics of the Indian tradition, when human beings live in dharma, when human beings' actions are such that they support the well-being of the whole, then the wastelands and the deserts are transformed into lush, abundant forests. But when human beings live with an absence of dharma, when human beings come away from dharma, when they come out of rhythm, out of harmony, when they're no longer living respectfully, consciously, when they're no longer honoring rina, they're no longer recognizing that they are guests here, then the abundant places are made into deserts. So if we look out at the world, this suggests that there is plenty of adharma been going on, lack of dharma, absence of dharma in recent centuries. However, there are also areas of the world that have reforested. Places that were deserts have become lush forests. There's places like this in in more than one continent. So it's not just one way. Things are happening, beautiful things are happening all over the place, as well as certain tendencies that we can see in mainstream society. We see economia without ecologia. This is definitely a problem in the world. But we also see that humans are making an effort as best as they can to live in dharma in many places. Now, I mentioned the idea of being a guest. So one of the aspect of this culture that has the idea of runner is that one honors one's obligations by being a good host if one has the opportunity to host a guest. So even today in quite a few Indian houses, certainly where I spend time in India, in Mysore, there are families that they still do this. They always make enough food they feed birds or animals, that they feed other creatures that they share their living space with. Not that they have pets necessarily, they might do, pretty rare in traditional Indian culture, but they feed the dogs that live in the street, they feed the birds and so on. But also they've got enough food that if a human visitor comes by, they can feed them. And so there's the idea that by practicing being a host, it further instills the attitude of reverence for the other, reverence for all of life. And so there's this idea of, sometimes they talk about the host is like a god, or the host is like the sovereign, like a king or a queen. But the idea of the host like a god, how do you treat the gods? With respect. You do your best to nourish them, you do your best to respect them. Now the gods as well, this is an important thing to mention. In yoga, we've mentioned the tattvas previously, and the indriyaha, these powers of our senses and these powers of our action capacities. These are also sometimes called devataha, meaning that they are divine powers. And the idea is that we honor them, we propitiate these gods by treating our sense powers and our action powers with respect, by exercising them appropriately, by paying attention to the input they give us. For example, the tongue is imbued with so much miraculous intelligence. You look at animals in the wild, and they're all in great shape. They don't have supermarkets where they can get their food easily, but they know exactly what to eat, and somehow they find it. There's the idea that the human senses are also equipped to help us eat exactly what we need in exactly the right amount if we start paying closer attention, if we train the senses. And this is the idea of yoga as a rehabilitation project or a recovery project. When we do whatever we're doing with all of ourselves, when we do, for example, our asana practice, and we engage and invite to participate very fully all the sense powers, we start to refine our taste, we start to reactivate those latent capacities, these amazing gifts. The senses, they're part of our self-preservation and protection system. They are designed to help us discern what is truly nourishing, what will bring us and support the state of cohesion that's what we really need to thrive in the world. So the idea that Runa, this idea that we are born not of our own ingenuity, it's a gift that's come to us. So to honor that gift, to respect that gift, we honor the teachers by embodying as skillfully as we can, and even building upon and refining the things they taught us. We honor our parents by trying to be a better parent than them. So this includes the idea, and this is something that's really, it showed up very palpably in my own life in the last decade. The recognition that when one practices yoga, one is not just practicing for oneself. Yoga, in terms of a practice that is inviting wholeness, this is a healing practice. And when we start to really pay attention and observe our own reality, what we usually notice, I've found, is that we see that we're carrying things that we haven't necessarily chosen, but we've inherited them. My mother died in 2013, but she's still in me, and she's still in my sister. And in the years after my mother's death, there was a lot of stuff happening in the family dynamic, and then there's been further losses of various other family members. And during this time, one thing that's been very apparent for me is that my parents are in me, and so are their parents, people that I didn't necessarily know. But I have inherited things that need healing. I have also inherited amazing gifts. So the idea of honoring the ancestors is to honor the amazing gifts they've given us and to do what we can to heal the things that they didn't quite get to heal, because they had their own challenges to deal with. And then honoring the gods, honoring nature, honoring the whole of existence, walking lightly, gracefully on the earth, walking beautifully on the earth, honoring this amazing gift of a human body and using it in a beautiful way, a way that leaves the earth and the society better than we found it. So this is the idea of Rana, and this is also very intrinsic in the Indian method. It's part of the context in which yoga has come up. So I also thought it was important to share that in terms of the Vedic context in which yoga has developed.